For assignment 6, we're going to be looking at the pivot assembly. There's a couple ways to go about generating this part with the box. So I'll look at that one as a thin feature. And then we could also just do an offset and close off the end. So both of those are available. We would just have to check the radiuses. Looks like that is a missing dimension. So, it kind of looks tangent to that. So we're interpolating or inferring the dimensions on that one. Pretty straightforward on the handle. And then the link, nothing too crazy there. The radius is going around the bottom side. Those can be kind of interesting. And then the handle, our exploded view. Notice the pins. There wasn't a drawing for the pins, so those are pretty self-explanatory if you want to create them. But we'll be introducing the toolbox to utilize that library to pull those items. So they won't have these part numbers, and I'm not really concerned that much about part numbers, especially if it's a purchase part and we're grabbing hardware and definitions out of the toolbox library. That'll be easy enough to interpret. So let's go ahead and get started with the box pivot. And these are in metric, so new part metric. And from the front, let's make the bottom slot center. So if we already have that geometry, it might make the U shape a little bit easier. Make sure that I get into the sketch on the front plane. So no, I don't want to rename it. I still don't want to rename it. There we go. All right, so I'm going to make this as a slot. I've been paying attention to the dimensioning, that when I'm building these odd-round shapes with the slot tool, it is acting. The drawings are acting a little on the maybe unpredictable side, or not the way that I expect. All right, so I can dimension the center line for 50. They're showing 10 on either side. Radius of 8. And we have the two holes. And this is about the time when we want to start paying attention to our tolerances as well. So we'll make a pass after we do the drawing and think about what we would actually be putting through here for bolts and mounting to our geometry. So let's go ahead and make that equal. We'll add the smart dimension for an 8mm. And because I want this to be centered, when we go into the extrude, we're going to switch to midplane. And under midplane, we have a dimension of 6. All right, so that gives us our geometry, and go into the right plane then and open up a sketch. And then the choice would be, do I want to convert the geometry? Do I want to draw the line? Wherever I can convert, that on edge is kind of handy. So let's go Control 3 to get this back out and around. The other thing I'd probably like to do is, since there is symmetry on this, we'll go ahead and do a center line and make it vertical for infinite length. And then we're going to bring off a tangent arc and go not to another tangent arc, so Control Z. And since I'm out of that, I'm just going to hit L on the keyboard to jump back into the line command. And looks like I missed something there. It is pulling tangency, so I would like to see if it, yeah, all right. I got my geometry, so I'm going to apply the vertical. And then our overall height is 47, so let's get that in there. I want to kind of define this and think through the process. And we had 16 and 5, so that would be 8 to the center line and 5 to 13. As much as I don't want to do math, for the thin feature um, example, I'm going to go with the 13. Okay, so we can take these two items, select, hold down the control, select the center line, and then we're going to mirror the entities. All right, so the difference between the thin feature and the offset is that with our offset entities, it would pick our geometry and cap the ends. So we'll try and come back and do that, or regenerate the sketch. But let's go ahead and treat this as a thin feature. So I want you to recognize that if you happen to leave some geometry open and it shows you a thin feature, and especially if the thin feature is grayed out to where you can't deselect it. That means it's an open profile, and it will not let you change it. So that being the case, if I saw this and I knew I didn't want it, I would go ahead next and go look to make a correction so that I could get back to a regular extrusion. All right, so we're going to do the one direction, but I want it to go to the interior, and it will calculate the inside radiuses. We're overall is 30, and it is set to midplane, so that looks good. All right, so that should do it. All right, and if I go back and I do the select and control select, I should see 16 millimeters at the gap. All right, so that gives me the extrude thin. I might be able, no, I don't think I can suppress. Let's just go ahead and undo. Either way, we're going to end up with this geometry. Didn't want to go that far. Oh, okay, it did all right. Occasionally when I hit the undo, or if it goes a little bit past, it makes me a little nervous. So, all right, so we're going to now go from the thin feature. I can right click on one of the objects and select the chain. And when we go into offset, we have a 5 millimeter offset, and I do want to cap the ends, and the choices are to arc or line. So it gives us the same basic geometry. What I don't have here then is, well, tangent went that way. So I'm not sure why the offset is not liking those. So I have a tendency to just start grabbing and dragging things, and if it doesn't go fully defined, I'll come back and address it later. All right, but this gives me an extrude, and now there won't be a thin feature. 30 millimeters midplane is still okay. However it calculated that is fine. So let's go into the front plane. We'll open up the sketch, and we're going to put a through hole. And I'm right clicking and going into the select, so I can select the center point, control select the origin, go to vertical, and then we'll be at 6 millimeters. All right, so it is 10 millimeters from the top. And then because I drew this on the front plane, I'm going to not extrude, extrude boss. So if you happen to hit extrude boss, we just close it, go over to extrude cut, and I want to go through all both. So that's going to find those faces and terminate at that point. So that will leave the fillets on the outside. I had a little bit of a blink on some notifications coming up, so I paused and I went ahead and created my folder and my naming. So if I do the control select, probably one more control select, then I'm going to put in the radius of 5. And since I haven't moved the mouse button, I notice that I have the right mouse to complete, so I can hit the right mouse button and that will finish it. So at this point, what I would have normally done is done the save as in my project folder, given it a name, created a new folder, and then gone ahead and saved it with the file. So because I did the save as, it's going to ask to replace it, but it's not really doing anything too different there. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the handle. All right, so the post handle is around to kind of a slot. So there's a couple different ways we could do that geometry, but I think the slot tool is still pretty good there. So on the geometry side, we don't do too much in the way of revolves. So when I see the revolves, I'm gonna go that route. So whenever we do a revolve, I'm looking at this side of the geometry, and I'm going to cut it in half, and then pretty much just be looking at this profile to make my shape. So we're gonna grab a new metric part. Front plane, sketch. Whenever I'm doing a revolve, I go center line. We're going to draw it in the same orientation. So this is going to be a horizontal infinite length center line. Put the origin at the end, and then a rough sketch of the size. So if I don't close this off, it will ask me if I want a thin feature or to go ahead and close it off. And as long as it doesn't self-intersect or cross over, it's going to finish fine. So, but normally I would just go ahead and draw that last line segment. But if you do see the revolves and it doesn't give you that geometry right away, then you can go ahead and tell it, okay, you can close it off. All right, so there's my outside shape. The 12 and 20, 10, 80, all looks good. We'll go into the features, tell it to do a revolve space. It warns me the sketch is currently open. Would you like to close the sketch? Or you can click no, and it will make it a thin feature, which if I was making a cup or a bowl or something, I would possibly want it to be a thin feature. So what it did in the sketch is it went ahead and drew a line in between the 2 points. All right, so that looks okay. We're going to go back into the front plane. If I'm going to use the slot tool, then I'm looking to generate something like that. All right, and because it intersects, the intersecting part's still going to connect, but I get that geometry pretty quick. The other technique, since there are going to always be alternatives, is that if I go with a corner rectangle, I'm looking for that to be in place, and I would like to select the midpoint. I'm looking for that end, and I'm going to make it the end point. So the thickness on this, the radius is 5, so that's going to give me 10 for the width. And rather than deleting this line, I'm going to switch it to construction geometry because that makes it useful to find the center for the circle. All right, so the slot would have a center line coming this way that we would find the point for. This pretty much is doing the same thing. So 45 to the center. And then our circles, our through holes, circles for the through holes will go there and there. Those are both 6 millimeters through. So a select, control, select, equal, smart dimension, 6. All right, so this one does not have its dimension yet for the horizontal, so we'll go 25. Anytime I have something left in blue and I would like to know why, it is going to be grab the center point or grab the perimeter, and if the perimeter doesn't move, well, we have the diameter or something is controlling it already. What is not being controlled is the vertical. So select, control, select the center points, make those horizontal. Then our features. Now, if this was the slot, we would be doing the same thing. We would still extrude this out mid-plane, and we have a width then of 5. And we do want to merge the result. So even with the slot having that little arc, a positive into a positive is just a positive. So as long as we're merging the result, it's going to give us that result. All right, so I was thinking that this had the radiuses on it, but it did not. So this goes to the post handle, and we'll save it. And I do still kind of like to close those files. We could leave them open, and Windows and SolidWorks have gotten a whole lot more stable. So there's still going to be a limit of how many files I want open. So if I'm not working on them, I will usually close them. All right, so this geometry again looks like the slot, but we'll use the rectangle and center convert again. So looks like so I jumped into, before I picked my plane, it gives me the option to select. We'll go something like that, and I can do the origin and the line and make that a midpoint. This is going to have a thickness then of 12. And an overall length of 94. All right, and rather than getting rid of that, and I could leave it an object line, but I think it's better because then I'm not having to select contours and regions, even though I really like contours and regions. If I don't have to select those, I will pass on it. All right, so let's go ahead and extrude this out. And we're staying in the midplanes for this. It's working pretty well so far. So 14. And we'll go ahead and accept. Now I could open up a sketch on the top plane, which I would be drawing interior. That's fine. Or I can open up a sketch on any of the planar faces. And I'll just get my rectangle started so that I can find that silhouette edge. So whenever we're dealing with cylindrical, or in this case, the radius or partial cylinder, when we drag along where that plane intersects, even though I'm above it or below it, or if I was on the, whatever it was, the top plane, I can grab that silhouette edge because where that plane intersects that cylinder, it's going to give me that little symbol of a cylinder with a line through it. So let's see, let me have the midpoint. All right, so midpoint to midpoint. Sometimes that's a little tricky to select. Most of the time I would probably try to get the midpoint first and then come back to the geometry. So, it was 3.5 to the other side. I thought that looked a little narrow. All right, so we got 20 millimeters there. So let's just make that driven and reapply the dimension with the 3.5 on the outside. Okay, so because that's a midpoint, it's going to treat it with the same type of symmetry. So we can extrude cut, Shouldn't have to do through all both. Sometimes, occasionally, if it goes on the direction 2 and there's nothing out there, it will tell you it cannot terminate the feature. All right, so on the top plane then, let's go into the sketch. We're going to, since I started with the slot, let's go ahead and look at the difference. So I got that one with the center point instead of the end point, but it's not going to matter too much. So this has a 16 as an overall. So when we have an arc, we want to get that max condition. So if I hold down the shift button and then go back to my geometry, I can, oh, got to place it. All right, that's interesting. Okay, so it took that one, so it did go back to the center. All right, well, we'll go that route. On the leaders, no, and the value, and oh, there it is, leaders, and we want to go to the max in condition. All right, so putting the 16 in and then having it move out, that's going to take us to the point. So radius of 4. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened with the video there, but let's go ahead and add the through hole. And that is also a diameter of 4. And then we can extrude. And midplane is going to put it as a distance of 4. So we are given the, got to make sure I'm looking at this in the right way. So 14 and minus the 8, that's going to leave me 6. All right, so anytime I end up doing math, I'm going to go back and check. I have, oh, I was in inches. Oh, good. I say that because I have multiple features that because I managed to pick inch, pounds, and seconds, when I go to bring this in, this part is going to be pretty big compared to the rest of the metric parts. So a correction is in order, and let's see what's going to be the best way. Well, we're going to go ahead and mess this up whatever we do, so let's go ahead with deleting the dimensions, selecting everything, and then going with the scale. And 0.03937, and we'll scale about the origin. And that got really small. All right, so I'm still in the inch, pounds, and seconds, so that's not going to help me. Coming down to the millimeters, grams, and seconds. Now I can go back into the sketch. It goes 94, but notice the rounding error because even though it's 0.03937, I believe, one of them's an 8, the rounding error still puts it off by just a little bit. All right, so radius of 6. And you're not really going to see that if you're not out that many decimal places, but let's go ahead and pick that. And then we want to see the thickness. 355. Nice. All right, so this one was the 14 and rebuild. All right, now we're going to get an error. All right, because it is way bigger than the geometry, and a cut extrude is going to pretty much wipe it out. So we can grab and just redrag that one. So we'll put in our 20 millimeters and our 3.5 from the edge. So on the one hand, I could have just closed this and redrawn it, but it is good practice or a good thought. Oh, that one satisfied the conditions where everything disappeared, but it still met the criteria. So let's go ahead and put that dimension on, since it's going to end up being the first diameter. And that one shouldn't have stayed. Okay, it went to 4. Okay, it did adjust to 4 millimeters. All right, we're going to see if we can do this again. Go select, hold down the shift button. Not sure which one I'm going to get there. All right. Well, it didn't give it to me anyway, so we'll go with the 16. And why did it pull up the slot geometry? Because that one should have been a radius of 4. Oh yeah, and then those are going to sometimes get thrown out into space. All right, so let's see. Coincident diameter. All right, so that's still showing the 16. So let's go over to the liters, make it a maxing condition. Wow. So I'm not seeing any geometry on that one. So I think between the two, I'll go ahead and delete the circle and reapply the radius of 4 and just create a new circle. So sometimes you just make the decisions and see what you get. All right, so one more. Just notice the 18. So let's go back to 16. And we'll go ahead and accept, and that should be pretty long again. And we had the thickness of 6, and we'll rebuild, and then the last is the radiuses of 3. So my caution for having these radius geometries. And let's see, that is on this side, and this side is, it does help to protect the, for a stress riser. The problem is machining it is not always going to be very easy. So if it increases the cost of the part, you'll want to rethink or make sure that that is a desired outcome. All right, so we'll go ahead and save this as the link. And since we're staying with the post, I'm gonna add that into the description or into the name. All right, we're gonna finish up this video, and then we'll do the I think the handle is all that's left, and we'll start on the assembly next.